Hello, I'm here with Phil Straub, the Executive Vice President and Managing Director, Aviation for Garmin International. Phil, thank you for meeting with us today.
Bill, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
I wanted to ask you, what products does Garmin plan to emphasize during the upcoming NBAA conference in Las Vegas?
Well, we've got a few of them that we'll run through, and probably the top of the list I'm really excited about is the G5000 program and the Citation XL XLS. We've just hit a milestone. We're just a little after 2 years into this program. We've now equipped about 10% of the fleet with the G5000. And so I think that shows huge confidence from the operators out there about this solution that we bring. It obviously has all the pillars of next gen in there, full ADS-B compliance, datacom, performance-based navigation. So it brings all that there with a very forward-looking view to where we can go with this, because that's been one of the pillars of what we've done with flight decks for the past 15 plus years, where we introduced probably G1000, I think was the first one in the aftermarket with the King Air 90. And what those operators have benefited from are really software innovation and updates that happen on a yearly or so basis that we make available out there. So when they invest in a platform like that, it's really looking forward. And we're grateful for the confidence that operators have put in us that way. And to that extent, I mentioned G1000 was introduced, it's been over 15 years ago. It's getting close to 20 years ago. And about maybe 3 years ago, we did kind of a front-end update. They're smart displays, so we introduced the NXI system. And that adds about 10x performance of processing power in both CPU and graphics to it. And we've covered a number of upgrades from King Airs to Mustangs, Phenom 100s, Phenom 300s, TBMs, and so forth. And a lot of these owner groups have really taken advantage of that, and others are still investing in that. So we're talking about updates and things available there. We're really excited about that. If I go to more of the non-integrated flight deck, I still call them integrated. They're more point solutions, such as with our TXI system. We now have EIS coverage on more of the PT6 based programs, so the Conquest 425, the King Air C90, Piper Cheyennes, the Cessna Caravans out there. And we're really excited to have the PC-12 joining our EIS platform in the first quarter of 2022. So historically, we've done a lot of piston coverage with our engine indication systems, and now this is really expanding the turbine market significantly that way. Another area we're really excited about are the autopilots. I just believe that autopilots, a modern digital flight autopilot, brings so much safety technology in terms of envelope protection of the aircraft, underspeed, overspeed, things like that. But especially as you think about like the turbine market, where you see a little bit more of our focus, just having coupled VNAV capability, when you pair it up with a capable navigation system like our GTN XI, modern flight deck like a TXI, and now our autopilot, these descend via constraints that go into major Class B airports. They become a lot more of a non-issue, because historically, if you're just thumb wheeling things down, as I call it, or working it down through a complicated arrival, it's a pretty high workload. But when you look at an autopilot that can do, like our GFC 600 that can do VNAV, it's really a great capability of the airplane. And then maybe lastly, I'd pivot and talk just a little bit about our services. There's a lot of capability in our flight plan portfolio of what we do, and it's really a portfolio, because a lot of people think about it as, well, I file my flight plans here to there, but there's various things like EAPIS, pre-departure clearances, runway analysis, and much more. But one that has had a lot of attention for all the good reasons is safety management systems. Operators are very interested in how do they make their operations safer through tools like our flight risk analysis tools, integration with their cell phones to report events and so forth. And so we're really excited with this momentum behind safety management systems to talk more about what we're doing there, integrated with our flight plan portfolio of capabilities.
Mm-hmm. In the G5000 flight deck upgrade is a supplemental type certificate for Citation XL XLSs with the original Honeywell Primus 1000 avionics suite, I believe.
Yeah, you're correct. It's a retrofit done that way. It's an STC Garmin owns and manages all these STCs doing these type of retrofits. And I think one other interesting point, as I look at these retrofits over the years, they're major investments for customers, but we're probably somewhere around 1,000 retrofits that have occurred across King Airs and the various platforms that are approved now.
Well, that's really impressive to be able to claim 10% of the market after just over a year of after certifying that. So,
yeah, thank you.
Great. Now, this has kind of become a standard question these days, but I'm curious as to whether any of the restrictions that have been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic slowed or delayed any of your supplier deliveries to Garmin, or have they affected your ability to deliver to some of the aircraft OEMs?
Well, we're certainly not immune from those supply chain challenges. I mean, it's very visible, I think, to the general public with the automotive side. But those sodium type of components are used in aviation, avionics, and electronics that way. So we're managing it. We haven't really had interruptions at this point. We have had some lead times go up on some products. And one of the business philosophies of Garmin we've always had is we use inventory as a business tool. So you hear some companies talk about very lean operations. I'll be honest, that's not us. We think having some of everything from the raw material to the finished goods on our shelves is a good thing. Now, obviously, we don't want excess, but we'll look at critical codes, risk item, things like that, and say, you know, I'm just not going to be worried about holding 12, 18 months type of inventory on some of these critical items that way. So that's helping us navigate through these times, but we're certainly not immune to it. And I would say it's almost at least the issue of the week. What are we dealing with? And it could very well be the issue of the day of how are we going to mitigate this potential interruption that we're dealing with. So it's there for sure.
So you're making do with during these times.
Yes.
Now, one of the most exciting announcements in the industry was Garmin's certification of Autoland in October of 2019, and more recently, you've announced Smart Glide for engine out situations. That was back in July as part of your autonomy family of autonomous flight technologies. So I believe Autoland has been certified in the Piper M600, the Dyer TBM 940, and the Cirrus Vision Jet. Can you tell me what's the latest with developments with Autoland and the autonomy suite of technologies?
Well, yeah, I love those technologies, and you talked about really two that are almost not counter, but it's funny how we think about them. So you mentioned Autoland and you mentioned Smart Glide, and we have this very simple way of talking about them sometimes. And one is about good airplane, bad pilot, and I use bad in air quotes, and the other is about bad airplane, good pilot. And when I say that, what I mean is Autoland was kind of designed around the issue of what happens if the crew or the pilot is not able to do their job. You've got a very good functioning airplane, but the pilot is not able to do what they normally do as pilot in command. Smart Glide is kind of the opposite. I have a capable pilot at the controls, but I have an airplane having issues, presumably power plant issues where it's not developing full power. It could be partial or complete failures that way. So they kind of come from different ends of the spectrum in terms of the problem they're trying to solve. But back with Autoland, we're on track to hit, last I knew, about 350 airplanes in the field by the end of this year. Really excited about all that going on. And statistically, I think we figured at some point, as you reach a certain mass of airplanes like that, it'll get to where you probably expect an occurrence to occur about every year, maybe not, ramp up to that. So we haven't seen a real activation in the field yet. No one wants that to happen. But, kind of like I said, just standing by, I would say almost with a little bit of anxiousness, saying we want to make sure that our technology really does what it was meant to do and certified to do. So we're standing guard is what I'd like to say there. And then with the Smart Glide, what's really neat there is it was brought to the field under an approved model list. So this technology opens up hundreds of airplanes covered under that approved model list, and it's offering these safety benefits here and now to a very broad base of aircraft out there. And unlike Autoland, where when that happens, there's really no hiding from it because it squawks the emergency code, it communicates on guard, it's meant to be very visible. We really hope that the Smart Glide is the opposite, to where it's doing its job, and we actually probably never hear about it other than people call up and say, hey, your technology made a difference in the safe outcome of my flight in a very stressful situation.
Okay, yeah, you would never see you wouldn't see a situation where an engine out caused an emergency landing. It wouldn't be reported as an incident that way.
Well, we hope it just gets
Yeah,
safely back down to the pavement, where it was supposed to be.
yeah, that's great. This also is kind of becoming a standard question, and I don't know if it's just a flash in the pan. I don't think it is, but what is Garmin's interest in urban air mobility, advanced air mobility? Are you currently supplying any content on any of the numerous platforms that have been announced?
Well, yeah, we actually have a public partnership out there with Joby that we can certainly talk about. And as you've seen, there's a lot of entrants in this market that feel they have technology that they want to bring to market, and we're actively engaged with many of those. Some have aerospace backgrounds, some don't. But like Joby, really like what they've done. They have a mix of the very high-tech entrepreneurial forward-looking way of doing things, but they also have a lot of aerospace experience there. So I think it's been a great partnership for Garmin and Joby.
Okay.
And then as we look at these, for me and I think for most of us, we know that technologically they can do this. These vehicles can take off vertically, fly a distance and land again. And it's really more about creating the infrastructure, to allow these things to happen. And I believe that's where the DOT and the FAA are trying to actively get engaged and say we need to coordinate across boundaries within the governmental organizations to foster this. And then it becomes about the business case of, there are limitations of how far these vehicles can fly with battery power technology that we have today. So how do operators create business cases that drive value to customers to operate these things? So there's pieces that have to come together, but I honestly feel like the technology part is there, and we just need to mature it and bring it to market, certify it.
Is Garmin providing flight deck avionics for Joby, or what specifically is it Garmin supplying?
Well, in general, I don't want to get into a lot of detail specific programs, but we're leveraging the core technology we have now. So we have, if you break it down to basic flying, we have Aviate technology, autopilots, things like that. We have Navigate technology, obviously GPS and other technologies that way. And we have communications, whether it be VHF, digital communications, SATCOM, all that. So we're leveraging all those type of things, and they're underlying pillars: data acquisition capabilities, diagnostics, central maintenance computers, all this breadth of technology, terrain awareness, you name it, to bring to these platforms in a way that scales accordingly. Because generally, for the most part, most of them are smaller and lighter, so we need to look at weight constraints and one other concept I'd say in traditional aviation we talk about is simplified vehicle operations. How do we automate more and reduce the pilot workload? So those concepts are very core and intrinsic to advanced air mobility platforms. So we're leveraging those type of things.
Sure. Now, it's been 5 years since the FAA released its performance-based rewrite of its Part 23 regulation. And the new rewritten rule applies to newly manufactured aircraft weighing in at less than 19,000 pounds with 19 or fewer seats. Has the rewrite of Part 23 had the intended effect in terms of reducing certification cost from Garmin's perspective?
Well, I think to give it a fair shake, you have to look at it as a continuum. So the answer to that basic question is yes, but we've applied it very specifically. And so the basic fundamental is you've moved from regulations that were very prescriptive, say you have to show compliance in this manner, to things that are more performance objective based. And the basic premise of what that has done is we have to do fewer issue papers, equivalent level of safeties, and things like that, which are very one-off-ish type things that create a lot of overhead and burden under the traditional rules. So now it's more easy for us to say, we propose meeting this safety objective in this alternative means of compliance. And it doesn't have quite that much overhead and bureaucracy. And then the other element is it embraces really the safety continuum that really was stood up quite a while ago, realizing that at the very light end, especially personal aviation, there's a safety level that's commensurate for that level. And that continues up through the highest end of at least Part 23, but honestly on to air transport and the largest transport category airplanes. And we need to scale safety objectives and regulations accordingly for those type of applications. And so we're seeing some of that come across in our things like compliance with high intensity radiated fields, HERF, and indirect effects of lightnings. So now we have better scalable means for compliance at the lighter end of Class 1, Class 2 type airplanes than what we traditionally had.
Okay.
And not speaking on behalf of the OEMs, but I know some of them are going forward with Part 64 amendments on new type certificate airplanes. And I think both the applicant, the type certificate holder, and the FAA are trying to feel out, how to apply this effectively. And maybe last comment on that, one other thing that's maybe slowed progress a little bit that I think we're moving past are some of the other civil aviation authorities when we think about Transport Canada and ANAC. We also needed them to recognize these performance-based standards and move up to this Amendment 64. Those things have more recently happened, so it just takes time. It's a continuum to recognize the full benefit of what we have available now.
Okay. What is the current mix or ratio of Garmin's avionics sales for FAA Part 23 versus larger Part 25 aircraft? And do you have a roadmap for changing that ratio at all, or what is the strategy?
Oh, I don't think we really look at it as a target ratio or whatever, and we really don't talk about specifics that way. But one of the philosophies we've had is that we kind of know as an organization where we've come from. So we've come up through general aviation, smaller airplanes. We've expanded into larger airplanes, transport category airplanes, as well as helicopters, rotorcraft applications. I think a key message for us is we don't want to leave anyone behind. So we're here to serve the experimental, the amateur build category. It may be, actually, that's a category that's actually been growing somewhat. But when you look at the lighter end, it generally isn't growing a whole lot. But that doesn't mean we don't care, and we're going to keep investing in that category as well. But we're also going to look forward, and you can see us leaning forward. We're in the super mid-size category. We're doing point solutions on larger aircraft as well. We're doing more in services. Certainly the rotorcraft market, I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring safety technologies there. So if you've paid attention, you've seen flight controls, autopilot announcements on things like the AS350, the Bell 505, and you'll see more coming in there. So it's just a lot of opportunity to not give up or not neglect the core of what we've done historically, but take this safety technology and make it available to other operators.
Yeah, that's good to know. And by the way, congratulations on the Collier Trophy for Autoland, which I think it's been awarded for the year 2020. So that's a great achievement.
Yeah, we're honored by that. We're humbled by that. It never gets old when I look at that list of peers.
Yeah.
To call them peers is like, I don't know how to do that, but people that have won it before, these are icons. So it's strange still to think about our name will be etched with those in history.
Well, I think you've certainly earned the status as a peer of the Collier alumni. So congratulations. Well, Phil, thanks very much. Those are the questions I had. Thanks for meeting with Business and Commercial Aviation. And I look forward to meeting with Garmin in Las Vegas.
Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Thank you very much.